Hey y'all, welcome back to the farm. I am trying to clean out some freezers lately because we have some spring processing dates for some of our hogs. And so part of that is making bone broth and canning up some stew beef. And today I am going to be rendering some of our lard. We had some fall pigs processed, and with moving and fall here, you're still canning tomatoes and all the things. The lard has just been sitting in our freezer, and so I'm going to pull it out and we're going to start rendering it. So come along, I will show you how to do that and what we use lard for. So if you are new here, welcome. We are Wild and Woven, and this is our little farm kitchen. We moved here a few months ago, and this is our very much used working kitchen, and it may not be aesthetically pleasing according to society and Pinterest. However, it is my little humble kitchen where my babies are fed and all of our meals are cooked from scratch. And so I love showing you how we cook some of our meals and how we use real food ingredients, either with food that we grow and raise on our land or that we get from our fellow farmers or even from our Azure Standard co-op drop site. So let's start with today's video, and that is about lard. And so these are some of the packages that we receive from our butcher. So we use two different processors. There's one that we trailer our hogs to, a official USDA inspected processing unit where we get these cutesy little labels, and we can sell these according to our state law to people at farmers markets, and this is just how it looks when we get it back. And so this is leaf lard. We also have a mobile processor who is better than USDA inspected, but according to our state law, we cannot sell this product to a consumer. So we share our product with friends and customers, and this is how it looks. It says not for sale on it. However, our pigs do not leave our property to be processed, and they are culled in the most humane way possible. So this is what leaf lard from him looks like. It's all the same. So leaf lard is the lard that is going to give you the purest end product. It is the fat that is harvested from around the kidneys and other organs in the pig. It is literally tasteless, odorless, and it is delicious. It is also very good for you. Animal fats, especially from pastured animals, like our animals are forested through the woods, and they have a highly nutritious diet. Animal fats from those animals are loaded with nutrients, and actually pork that is raised well has a high amount of vitamin D. There's a study to that, and I can link it below. But what a great way to get your vitamin D from whole real foods in the wintertime. But yes, so the lard we make from our pastured animals is highly nutritious. Now, unlike butter, lard technically doesn't really have a season. Butter is more of a seasonal fat because it comes from a cow in lactation. So depending on where that cow is in lactation and the season that she is in lactation, it gives a larger amount of cream or a more flavorful cream based on her diet. So a cow in the spring who has freshly calved and is on beautiful green forage is going to produce a very buttery yellow, large amount of cream in her milkings. And that is the season for butter. That is when you separate your cream, you're making butter, you're making cheese with the skim milk, or like us, sometimes we just throw the skim milk to the pigs because we prefer to drink the milk with the cream. So because it is the middle of winter, butter is not a food that we are eating a lot of. Yes, you can buy it at the grocery store, but let's not get on that topic right now in our lard making video. But lard is where you're going to get your cooking fats from, and we also make other things with lard. So let's start this process. I have left our raw fat, the lard fat, out on my countertop for a couple hours now, and I want it semi-frozen still because it's just easier to cut. So I'm going to cut this up into as small of cubes as possible, and I just want to warn you, please be careful when you're doing this because your cutting board and your knife is going to get very oily and you're going to slip. So thank you. Just be very careful when you're cutting up your lard. So I'm going to do that. We're going to get started and we're going to cut it up into small pieces as possible. Lard and babies are up from their nap, so excuse any background noise. So this is what I have. I cut up 3 packages of the lard. I think each package was around 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. So this is about 5 pounds of lard. I was gonna cut up more, and honestly my hand just gets really sore with cutting so much, and this is a fair amount to work with for today. You can do this on the stovetop. You'd actually do it in the oven. There's a method of rendering lard in the oven, but I'm gonna do it on the stovetop today. You could also do it in an Instant Pot, crock pot, or even like a big turkey roaster. If I were doing a really large batch, I would do a turkey roaster. I would also do my Instant Pot, but I'm actually gonna be using that for dinner tonight, and so I don't want it tied up with having to get the lard out and into jars in time for dinner. So I'm gonna do it on the stovetop today. So you're going to put your lard in your pot, and what I like to do is start it at a higher heat, like a medium to medium high on the stove, and kind of let that go for about 30 minutes. And then I will crank it down to low. For your crock pot, I would put it on high for about 30 minutes, but keep an eye on it because not everybody's crock pot is the same. Not everybody's stovetop temperatures are the same. You don't want it burning. When you start hearing crackling or sizzling, you're going to want to stir it and then put it to low. So you're going to put this in at a high heat for about 30-ish minutes and then drop it to really low, and it's just gonna melt literally for hours. So this is something that is going to take several hours, so please plan for that. Once you have it on low, you can virtually walk away. If you do start to hear sizzling or crackling, it's time to stir it, and then you can walk away again. But you will want to check it every once in a while just to make sure that it's not burning on the bottom. And so what you're doing is melting the fat and any kind of connective tissue or meat that is left attached to the fat is going to pull away and kind of sink to the bottom. And then when pretty much everything has kind of sunk to the bottom and there's not, much fat kind of floating on top or separating anymore, that is going to be your first rendering, and you're going to skim and ladle that liquid lard off the top of your pot. But let's start this first. Now, if you're worried about your pot size, I would shove as much as possible. So this is a labor of love, and if you think your pot is just slightly too small, pack it in there. It will melt. It's not going to hurt it if you just try to pack it in there. Obviously, I'm working with a smaller amount than what my pot has room for, so I don't have to worry about that. So I have this on a higher heat. I have it actually at medium for now, just because I've got the littles running around, and who knows when my brain is going to remember to come back, so I really don't want to burn it too much. But I could do a medium-high heat. And in about 30 minutes, I'm going to come back, stir it, and then I'm going to crank it down to a low temperature. This has been going for several hours now. I would say about 3 hours. What I'm going to do is I am going to strain off any of the liquid fat that's on here right now. So I have a camera stand. I have a colander with a cheesecloth in it right now over here, and it's resting actually over a smaller saucepan because I'm going to take the liquid fat and keep it hot on the stove. I'm going to warm up my jars that I'm putting my lard in, because you can put the hot lard in a hot jar with a hot lid and ring and seal it, and it will self-seal. Let me turn this camera around and I will show you what the lard looks like right now. So you can see it's become a little brown on these little pieces, and that's because we're getting to the tissue and the meat portion of them, and you can render these down even more after I pour this off. And then once you get to the very final part of these little pieces of meat, that's what you call cracklins. So I will show you how you can actually make like little cracklins out of this, and I mean you can use those for like little bacon pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and strain this off and add these pieces back into this pot to continue rendering. And I'm going to fill them up to the normal line that you would to leave headspace for canning. These jars are hot. You are going to put a hot lid and ring on it. You should wipe the rims down, but I know that I did not spill any. Okay, that was a little crazy. I've got... Anyways. Relatable, I'm sure. Okay, so I strained off about 3 hours worth of the lard into a small saucepan. It stayed on the burner on low so that it could stay hot. My jars were hot, my lids and my rings were hot, and I then took the hot lard, put it directly into the jars, wiped down the seals just to make sure. You're gonna have to wipe them with a really hot rag because it is an oil, and then throw the lids and the rings on. Put them on a towel, let them rest on your countertop overnight. They will self-seal. Depending on who you talk to, that is fine for storing in a cool, dark place. Oils especially will go rancid at high heats and in light. I would be fine keeping those in a cool, dark place for about 6 months. You can put them in your freezer. Make sure you are not using a glass jar that has a neck on it. The pint jars that I'm using are the wide mouth pint jars, so they're just straight up and down. They don't have a neck on them. Be sure to fill your jar according to the freezer directions so that if there's any kind of expansion, that your jar won't crack. They can be stored in the freezer for a couple years. So it just depends on how often you use your lard and the accessibility you want with it, your comfort level of storing it. You cannot water bath can or pressure can lard. It is an oil. If there's any kind of siphoning happening, your lids and rings will not seal. So that's not an option. If you want shelf stable, it's gonna have to be within your comfort level. I would say up to 6 months in a cool, dark place once the hot jars and the hot lard are self-sealed. I am left with these little brown bits that are simmering in here. There is some more lard that's being released from them. You can that up as well. That would be like a second rendering. It would be just a little more porky taste to it versus the first rendering would be the purest form. But let me show you what you can do with these little brown bits that are left, and making sure that you use every little bit of this leaf lard.
Different.
All right, so let's make the cracklins. I'm going to strain off the rest of the lard from these little brown bits. And this second rendering you can use for like frying, anything that is okay to have a very slight pork taste. And I'm going to lay these on my cookie sheet. There we go. So lay them out flat on your baking sheet. Preheat your oven to 350, and you can bake these for about 20 minutes until they're nice and crispy. Cracklins are out.
Huh?
They won't make it 30 minutes. Good morning. Yesterday was a little crazy. Filming, making lard, and then we rolled right into making dinner, and there was a lot happening. And so I've got kids over there that are just hanging out and playing. I am just gonna show you our end product here with our lard making. I've also got English muffins that are on their final rise. So yeah, there's all things happening. And so part of me showing up in this space, in this, YouTube world and community, is to show you behind the scenes of things that are happening here on the farm. And behind the scenes for me means being completely honest and transparent. And I am not going to be showing up with beautifully curated videos. I'm going to show up with as much information as I have for you, things that are just happening here on the farm, in the home. And we have 4 small children. We homeschool. My husband, Farmer Josh, works away from home a lot. And so sometimes videos and this life can be messy. I don't want to say messy, because messy feels so negative, and it's not negative for me. This is real life, and I want to show that to you, because I'm not fake. I'm just living this life, owning a small farm business while also being a mom of 4 small children that is responsible for their homeschooling and love and care. So this is us. But anyways, back to lard making. So we finished up last night with pouring hot lard directly into our hot jars with hot lids and rings on them, and they self-sealed overnight, and they sat overnight, and it is now this pretty white product. I'm not gonna open this because it's sealed. I did pour, I used it this morning. I poured the little extra bit in the dish. So yeah, at room temperature, it's very pliable. I just scooped this out and put it in my cast iron for eggs this morning. What I want to say about lard making, when you are rendering and you strain off your first bit of liquid lard, it is your purest form. So the longer that you let your lard render, the more the oil has, the more the liquid lard has in contact with those last bits of meat and cartilage, those cracklins, and the more it's going to have a pork taste. So when we strained after a few hours before the cracklins started turning really brown, that is your purest, low flavor, basically no flavor lard. You then can let your cracklins sit and render down more until they turn nice and brown. That lard that you strain off is going to be a bit more of a porky taste, and it will actually be a bit darker in color. If you were just to strain all of that and just have it individually, it would look white, but against the first rendering, it does look a little darker. I don't think it has such a strong taste. I would use it in pancakes, you know, things like that. But some people can pick up on that and they don't like it. So that first rendering after a few hours, when your cracklins are still kind of gummy white, that is going to be your purest rendering. And you may want to mark your jars like that. So that said, the cracklins, they were gone in like 30 minutes. The kids ate them up, and I'm totally okay with that because that is just great fuel for their moving bodies and their growing brains. So I'm fine with that. Otherwise, I will go ahead and I will place my jars, which I got 4 pints, 4.5 pints, from 4.5 pounds of leaf lard. So I would say 1 pound of leaf lard equals 1 pound of lard, really. The cracklins were not much left over. So eating nose to tail. So yeah, I'm gonna place my jars in a nice cool dark spot up in my pantry, and those will sit there for about 6 months. You can toss them in the freezer. They can stay in the freezer for a couple of years. You can explore different ways to use your lard, whether it be baking, cooking, seasoning your cast irons, and even more so your beauty products, soaps, all the things. And I will probably touch base on that more in the future. But for now, rendering lard, we did it. It's off to go play with the kids.